So give me, just tell us about WAITR. Tell us the story, tell us the background, and then I'll pick up on pieces and I'll kind of stick my finger in the wounds as you get there. So.
Okay. Well, I'll start off by saying, you know, most companies when they get started with a plan, or somebody's been working on an idea for a long time, or you know, and you decide, okay, now's the time. I'm just going to do this. Well, WAITR didn't start that way. It actually started by accident. I was going to attend Startup Weekend. A building similar to this opened up in Lake Charles called the Seed Center. And I was in between things and was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. So I attended a Startup Weekend event in Gainesville, Florida, to organize Startup Weekend at the Seed Center in Lake Charles. Great way to get a startup ecosystem going and so on. And I happened to join a team that built WAITR, a WAITR prototype, and we actually won the Startup Weekend competition. So
Nice.
On a Sunday night, we were judged the winners, and on Monday, I decided, well, now what do I do? I came here to learn about Startup Weekend. Now I've got this startup. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. It's a little bit of an offshoot from something I had done in the past.
Sure.
So do I go back to Louisiana and start this? And the first thought I had was I should stay in Florida because no one can start a successful startup in Louisiana. And that's the God's honest truth. I left Louisiana in 1991 to go work in technology. I moved to Dallas-Fort Worth, then moved to Silicon Valley for a while, and then moved to Europe for a while, all working in technology. Because in 1991, I was told, if you want to work in technology, you got to get out of Louisiana.
Correct.
So that was my first thought, and then I decided, well, no, let me go see if I could do this in Louisiana. And so I came back and started the company.
All right, so I know a little bit about the kind of the pre-WAITR world. Can you tell us kind of even how the concept came to be, where the idea for this delivery model even came from?
Yeah, so like I said, I was living in Dallas-Fort Worth in the early 2000s, 2003 to be exact. I got out of technology and got into the restaurant business because I thought, well, you know, boiling goes are so popular in South Louisiana, maybe I could make that work up here in South Lake, Texas. It's a suburb of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so I opened a place with my uncle, who's Acadia Crawfish in Crowley, called Crawfish City. And for 3 years, we sold crawfish, but what we found out real quickly is people didn't want to drive through. I mean, they wanted to come and sit down and eat, right?
Correct.
So that didn't really work out the way we had thought, and so I thought, well, you know, I bet people would want food delivered to their home, and so I started a concept called Moe's to Go, and it was order on the internet, and we'll deliver it to your door. We'll cook it and deliver it to your door. And we did that, and I had a friend that was in the commercial kitchen business, and he had a demo kitchen with all decked out with the best equipment any restaurateur could hope for. So I asked him if I could lease it for 3 months just to test the concept. And I did, and it was pretty successful, but rent was really high in that area, so I couldn't roll it out. So I put it on the back burner, and then fast forward to Startup Weekend in 2013, and I figured, all right, WAITR, Moe's to Go, that's really what I wanted to do, except I don't have to cook the food this way. So I'll go ahead and do it that way, and it was a much better choice.
That's actually why I love WAITR too, because I don't have to cook. I don't have to go get it. I technically don't have to clean anything. I literally just throw it all away. I think I told Jude, where is she? There he is. I told Jude he was wearing me out. I just want you to know that you got a good soldier. He was wearing me out. They had been in the center for I don't know what, couple months, and he goes, man, why haven't you ordered anything? I was like, oh yeah, you know, I don't know. So finally I was like, all right, I'm going to order. Kid you not. So if I ordered on Friday, I ordered again on Sunday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday at lunch, then Wednesday at night. And I came in and I went, damn it, Jude, you've ruined my life, man. And now my wife, the other night, she goes, hey, I'm going to be late at work, but don't worry, I just WAITR'd. I love it's a verb now, right?
That's right.
I WAITR'd dinner. And I went, oh, damn, I just did the same thing. So we got one going to the hospital where she works, got one coming to my house. I was like, you know, I would have No, that actually works out better.
Should have done a
I'm
group
glad
audit.
That's what we should have done. Absolutely. So it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So tell me about the startup weekend thing, because I feel like there's probably a pain point in there somewhere. When you won this thing, I'm assuming you won some money that went along with some fun seed money, some kind of prize, something like that, right?
Yeah, that's what you would think. Startup Weekend is actually an event that's sponsored by Google, and it's put on all over the world. But you don't win money. It's a startup competition for you win legal services, accounting services, time in an incubator, different kinds of things that startups need to get started.
Gotcha.
We won those things. However, those were all in Gainesville, Florida.
Correct.
So we never were able to take advantage of them because
Correct.
I came back to Lake Charles, Louisiana. So, but that's what you win in those events. So we didn't have seed money to start with.
Yeah.
So we had to go figure out how we were going to get seed money. Now we had a great idea.
Correct.
We had people who told us, through the customer development stuff we did at Startup Weekend, that said, yes, we would order and we would buy from you.
Sure.
But now we had to go figure out really how to build a company.
Correct. Okay, so I think a lot of us have questions about the money side of things. We'll talk about a bunch of stuff, but the money side, and anybody watch Silicon Valley? Anybody a fan? HBO? There's so many plugs on it. We should get a lot of sponsorships for this. So
That's my life every day, that show.
oh my, dude, I kid you not, every day I come in and I go, between Silicon Valley and Office Space, the movie, that's basically that over there. Every single day, same things. So, I think a lot of us, as we think about growing a business, we think about that day when somebody comes along and goes, man, I love what you do. I want to give you some money. I know they're not giving it to you, but I want to give you some money, and I want to see you become successful. And I realize this can be a sensitive subject, but tell me, what are the goods and what are the bads? And as open as you can be with that part of it, because I think a lot of people go, man, I want to get investors. I don't think we always know exactly what we're asking for when that happens. And so even with great investors,
Right.
we don't know what we're asking for. So this kind of gets in that touchy area, but can you give me the goods and then give me some of the things that you've struggled with in that?
Yeah,
even if it's just personally.
I'll start it out by this. This is not my first startup venture. I worked for McAfee Software for a long time, and then in the early 90s, or late 90s, excuse me, in the internet heyday, I started another startup and raised $20 million of other people's money.
Sign this guy up.
We were a victim of the bubble burst. One of our largest customers was Enron. You know what happened to Enron?
Speaking of pain points.
So yeah, it's not always roses, and
right.
And that was the first time I had gone out and actually raised capital from other folks, and it didn't turn out so great. And so for a number of years after that, you get scared, you get gun shy. You don't want to. I mean, all of the things that I had to deal with as that unwound, it really takes over your life. And so what people don't realize when they go into, at least in entrepreneurship, and I'll talk a little more about this later, but I think you can be a lifestyle business or you can be a growth startup, and that's kind of the path I've taken in my entrepreneurship endeavors. But you just don't realize what it does to you, your family, to the people who entrust their money with you, and if it doesn't go well. And so it can knock you down and ruin you. And it did for me for a while. But then you wake up one day and you think, well, I'll tell you what did it for me. I woke up one day and I started thinking about doing something different. And this was right before Startup Weekend. And I picked up a book called The Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank. And I started reading through it, and it started talking about the customer development methodology. And before you spend a lot of time building a big business plan and thinking through all these things, go out and talk to customers and see what they think, right? People try to protect their ideas because they don't want someone to steal it, right? Well, it's not the idea, it's the execution of it.
Correct.
So go out and talk to people, see if they'll buy it. And I read that, and then it really made me realize that it wasn't so much what I didn't do well, it was a lot of the things that were going on around me. And if I could just do things a little bit differently, knowing, from that perspective, knowing what not to do now, then I could go raise more money, and people could entrust that money with me and my company because of the lessons that I learned, through those failures.
Sure.
And so I decided, to give it a go again, obviously after startup weekend. And so we went out and raised $200,000 right off the bat. And I'll tell you, I haven't slept since then. And it's more than that now. I think all told we've raised $2.5 million.
Wow.
But I've done a lot of things differently this time than I did in the past that now ensure a better chance of success. And we've had some success, but we're not successful yet. So.
Sure, absolutely. So you kind of mentioned I don't want to make this an entire series on the pain of everything, but you did mention kind of the pain of the personal side and what happens. And I think a lot of us, maybe nods of heads, can feel that, right? You're working a ton of hours, you're kind of scratching by, you're figuring out how to make money, you're figuring out how to make your business work, and you're kind of, I can give you my story, right? You kind of get to that crossroads where you're like, man, I either got to be in or I got to be out because it's starting to hurt. I mean, I ended up in a situation where I sold my house, I sold my car, I broke up with my girlfriend. Like, I moved in with my mom. How attractive was that, right? Yeah, that was great for dating. I live with my mom. Trust me, it's a good decision, right? Warning flags all over the place.
Especially when you're broke, right?
Oh, dude, it was amazing. But it was that point, right, where you kind of had to go like, am I in or am I out? Because everything was kind of, for me, was kind of crumbling on this one side, but I had to make that choice. What direction am I going to go? So I'd like to hear, you don't have to tell that kind of story, but have you been at that crossroad? Something similar, not necessarily maybe that disastrous, but have you been at that crossroad? And what was your mentality? Like, how do you make your decision to get there? I can tell you my mentality. I was 26 years old. I was like, I don't have anything. So if I burn it all to the ground, I'm not anywhere where I am. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. House wasn't that fancy. I could still live with my mom. So, it was still socially acceptable. So tell me about a situation where you've kind of been there at that crossroads. And then more importantly what was the decision-making process? How did you kind of figure out what that next step is? Because really, both decisions are good or could be bad. You just have to make one.
Right. Yeah, it's, I'm fortunate. My wife's a registered nurse. She was going to always have a job. Mm-hmm. So I'm an entrepreneur, and when she married me, she knew that. And so, we kind of had that understanding early on that, of course I was with McAfee at the time, which is a pretty stable company. But, when I decided I was going to go this route, I knew I had to have a support system around me to make that decision, because I think you said one thing that is the number one problem that I see with entrepreneurs, even people that come talk to me today, is they're halfway in and they're halfway out, right? And I've got friends who are the best entrepreneurs in the world. They've just always worked for somebody else, right? And they have great ideas, and they have, I'm gonna make this work, but they can never leave that stable income, right? And I've never had to be in that position, I guess, so it was easy to be an entrepreneur in that sense. But it does take a toll on your family. I mean, when your kids, rely on you to be part of the breadwinning of the family, and you're an entrepreneur, and for a while it's really good, and then bam, it just gets really, really bad, and it does. Then you start to wonder. But I think what you have to do is, stay true to your convictions as an entrepreneur, and decide that if you're going to go into entrepreneurship, I'll tell you this: you have to be 110% all the way in. You can't do it halfway. If I ever give anyone any advice about entrepreneurship, that's it. And you watch Shark Tank and these things, and they tell you, you'll hear Mr. Wonderful saying, well, you're wanting me to run your business, right? Well, that's really what it amounts to. You can never go raise money if you're not 100% in. So you have to commit to it. And so you have to have a support system around you that allows you to commit to it full time.
So I guess another piece of this is that there's so much pressure on you, right? On us. I had a conversation, May and I had a conversation a second ago, right? Talking about, as an entrepreneur, you're on an island. And let me kind of explain what I mean is, when you're in that rough patch, right? Again, when we're doing well, man, you run around, beat your chest, there's nobody stronger than me, right? But when you're struggling, you can't go talk to your employees because you have to be the strength.
Right.
You can't go talk to your vendors because they can't know that you're struggling, right? You can't talk to your clients because, man, you'll scare them off. You can't really talk to your spouse or your family because they don't understand the same problems that you're running. They're not even problems, just challenges, right? So you're on the entrepreneur island. And if you don't have a peer group around, what do you do? So when you, and I know, I know you well enough, I know that we all hit that place. When you get there, what do you do? Where do you go?
Yeah, so I always thought all those same things that you just said, right? What I've learned with WAITR, certainly in the beginning, because we've gone through some significant growing pains. I mean, to put it in perspective, all of last year, 2015, we did 54,000 orders. In the 5 months this year, we've done 250,000 orders. Woo! So, I mean, that's growing pains, right? I mean, it's big time. And what I've learned is that you can go to those folks when times get tough. It's how you present it that matters. We just had a situation a couple days ago with, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a customer situation that was a problem with our software. And so, we called the customer up and we said, look, we had transactions didn't settle for a whole week. So restaurants didn't get their deposits for a whole week, right?
Wow, yeah.
And these are mom and pops that need the money.
Correct.
And we had restaurants calling us every day, hey, where's my deposits? Where's my deposits? Well, we didn't put an alarm on that critical component.
Yeah.
Now, we have alarms on everything. But that one piece we didn't have an alarm on that told us that there was a problem. And so we're getting all these calls. And so everybody's like, well, what do we do? We can't tell them that we didn't make their deposits. And I'm like, guys, listen. Call the restaurants up and said, we messed up. We didn't do our job this week. Your transactions didn't settle. You didn't get your money. If you need to have your money today, we will front you the money today until we get them settled and figure it out. And you know what they told us? No, don't worry about it. Can you get it to me by Monday? Yes, we'll get it to you by Monday. All right, that'll work for me. So rather than just avoiding the problem, right, we hit it head on. Yeah. We went straight to the restaurants. We were honest with them. We told them it was our mess up, that we fixed it. It wouldn't happen again. And I do the same things with our employees now if it ever gets to that point, right, because I've been in the other position. Yeah. So I think I've learned that, to where you might not think you have people around you who would support you when times get tough, if you go about it the right way, people understand things happen. And so, if I ever get into that position again, I'll confront it head on.
I would say that's a pretty strong position there, and recruiting talent at WAITR probably just got a whole lot easier. So.
I will say this, though, about recruiting talent real quick, because I meant to say this a little bit earlier.
Good, because I was going to ask you about recruiting talent. We're going to talk about this, so
okay,
go ahead.
I'll just say, you was talking about not using WAITR for a long time.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we'll get people coming in to interview, and I'll be interviewing them. Oh, great, well, what do you think of the product? Oh, I think this is a great idea. I'm like, well, great. Have you used it to order? Well, no, I hadn't used it yet, but I downloaded it. So if you come to interview for WAITR, at least use it once before you come.
Yeah, I genuinely, and again, I'm going to give a shout out to Jude. There came a point where I was so shamed because I thought, these guys are in our entrepreneur center, right? We're helping them. We're having these discussions all the time. Man, I don't even drink our own Kool-Aid here. I was like, I'm that guy. I really am. He grabbed me. He literally grabbed me in the parking lot. He goes, tonight, order something. And I sure did. And I have regretted it ever since.
But we've been thankful. So.
Oh, dude, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. So, okay, so this is the movement from solopreneur or startup, right? The very, very small team. You guys are now in the scaling aspect. And now in the beginning, it's the technology, it's the process, it's the product, right? You go, you guys want the product? Yeah, no problem. Well, the product at some point transcends being the application and becomes the people, right? So now your decisions, I'm making an assumption, but the decisions come more important in the next hire than the next feature, right? Because the wrong person blow everything up. So talk through that process for me is hiring, good hires, bad hires. How did y'all blow it up and make the mistake, and then how do you fix it now? Because I'm going to tell you, and I'll tell my story real quick, right? So I had a small marketing company. There were 3 of us. We started to grow. We didn't realize we had a cash flow issue. We figured that out later. But we add 2 new people to the team. And I love them. They interview great. Resumes look solid. They've got a bunch of contacts, right? We send them out into the world, and they absolutely start destroying relationships because they don't fit in, right? We think they fit in. They look like they fit in, but they don't fit our team. And so we had to go back and basically go back and like you were talking about with your clients, apologize and say, we screwed up. We're going to pay for what we did just to get back to even, and we hope that you'll do business with us again, right? It was devastating for us. And so we had to revamp our entire hiring process. We use a top grading model, and that's kind of what we have implemented now in our training, but shameless plug. But how has that been a challenge for you guys? And kind of tell me the learning story, and then tell me what you've put in place to get past it now.
Yeah, so that's a tough one for us. I mean, we have over 300 people working for us now in 8 different markets now, and we're hiring probably 50 a week. So it's really tough to keep up with. And I was talking to some of my guys today, and one of the things I learned in my failures is that, especially when you hire people in key positions, one of the most important things is to spend as much time with them as you can, so you really get to know who they are or what they're about beyond just the interview, right? So if you're going to hire a director or or even a higher level manager or an executive team or those kind of things, you do that. But in our case, we hire hundreds of waiters, we call them, which are drivers, that go around town delivering, and we don't always have that luxury to spend a lot of time with them. Like, we need 50 more today in Lafayette. How do we get them in, trained, and in the field today?
Correct.
And so it gets really tough. And that's the face of our company. So they're the people that our customers see. And so we want to make sure that we try to hire the right ones, and we don't always do it. I mean, it's hard. So we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, we're still trying to figure out how we hire the best people, put them through the right interview. They all go through a background check and, those kinds of things. But by the end of this year, we'll have a couple thousand employees. And we're not going to get great employees every time. And so I also talk about how we have to be bigger than any one employee. So one employee can't take the whole company down. So we have to put systems in place where we can try to recognize where there's faults and get feedback from our customers. And we just implemented one in the app, a chat feature. And we've heard about some of our not so great employees recently that we've been able to act on. But it's a super big challenge, especially with a company like us, where we're hiring hundreds and hundreds of people in multiple cities in such a short amount of time. So I haven't figured it out completely yet, but when I do, I'll let you know.
All right. Well, I'll tell a good story too, because I think, I'm asking you to reveal some stuff, and not all of it's always good, but I had one of the waiters, so I ordered some pho, is how it's pronounced, as I'm told. Pho is incorrect. Pho. I ordered some pho. He comes to the house, and man, he gets out of his car. I heard him pull up, right? So I go to the door. I open the door. He's got to be a college kid. He's a young guy. And he comes out, and I can just see his eyes. As soon as he opens the door, this pain in his face. And I'm like, what? And I know you're looking at me like, oh, where's this story going? And I'm just sitting there like, oh, this isn't good. And as soon as he stands up, his entire waist is just soaked. I mean, he looks like he wet himself, right? And he comes up and he goes, Mr. Barker, I'm sorry there was an accident on the way over here. I go, obviously. And I'm thinking, man, I hope he didn't pee on himself. Like, you know. He said, the lid popped off. Apparently it wasn't sealed all the way, which happens, right? The lid popped off. He had it in his lap because he was trying to hold it because he didn't want it sloshed. He told me the whole story. And he said, it busted. It's in my lap. He's holding it on my porch as it's dripping out of the bag, right? And he said, I'm going to go get it replaced for you right now, but I thought you'd want your summer rolls, right? I had like some egg rolls. He had pulled them out separately. He said, I thought you'd want those while I'm running back to the place to go grab your food. And I went, oh man, like, that's one of the nicest things I could think. You know, he didn't just go like, sorry, your food's messed up.
Yeah.
Or you know, he actually thought, I just spilled all this hot stuff all over me. I'm going to pull out this guy's egg rolls, give them to him, and then he turned around. He immediately got back in the car. He said, you want me to take it? I'll take it back. I said, no, man, I'll throw it away. I threw it away for him. He was back in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
and
good job training that guy,
yeah.
Jude. So
I kid you. Is that who it was? He was unbelievable. And he came, and he was still just soaked. And I told him, I said, man, you want another shirt? And he was like, no. And I really wanted to freak him out because I wanted to have a WAITR shirt on when he came to my house so he could open up and see WAITR delivering to WAITR.
WAITR?
And I didn't want to mess with it. I didn't want to mess with him too much. So
yeah, I mean, that's a challenge. You know, one of the things that we try to do to deal with situations like that, because we have several of them, anytime anybody has a bad experience, they can call our customer service line, or now they can just hit the chat button in the app, tell us what happened. We'll send a driver out with fresh food if that's what it takes, whatever it is. So we try to make good on every situation, and we don't take that out of the restaurant. The restaurant did their job. In that case, we messed up, right? So we fix it. It cost us money to do that, but when we fix it, that creates hopefully a lifetime customer. Sounds like you're a frequent customer now, Zach.
I have told that story multiple times, and I kid you not. I had one of those moments where, you know, like your wife would go, oh, I felt for him that moment. I literally was like, oh, what a sweet kid. You know, it was like, I felt like a dad. It's like, what a sweet kid. He's so good. Like, he literally went out of his way to get, and he was like, I just thought you'd want these. Man, they must have been plated in gold at that moment for me because they were so valuable. I was starving. I was like, oh my God, I love this kid.
I know that feeling though, because I was the first driver. So myself and the other 4 co-founders, so it happened to me. I know what it's like.
Well, you guys are doing a phenomenal job with it. Phenomenal job. So I really don't want to ping you on any more questions, but I would like to know, as you're growing, I know you're about to make some travel trips and things like that. What's the biggest fear for you right now as an entrepreneur? And you're technically involved in it, right? You helped to develop the code, is that correct?
Well, I did the first database.
The first, okay.
Yeah.
So you're not, you didn't come in this as the financial wizard or as the sales guy. It was a technical aspect, but having that technical, that deal making, and some of that administrative capability, it's not very common. A lot of people start and they're highly technical. Or you have someone who's a killer salesperson, they're just looking for a product to sell, right? Or they have a great system. Coming in and knowing that you had a technical aspect, but now you're really in the deal-making side. As you look forward, what's that thing that now is keeping you up at night that you have it on your horizon and you know, not to say you're not scared of it, but you're always thinking about it. It keeps you up. What's the thing that you're worried about as you guys move forward in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Well, first thing, I had a little bit of technical knowledge, but my knowledge was entrepreneurship and business for the most part, right? And that's, you know, if you're going to start a technology company, I'll tell you, because I did it 2 ways. The first time I did it without a technical co-founder. This time, the first thing I needed to do was make sure that I had solid technical co-founders. And entrepreneurs will start a company and say, well, I don't want to give any of my company to somebody else to be a co-founder. Well, your company is not going to be worth anything without the technical co-founder if you're starting a technology company. So don't worry about what you're giving to that person. give him enough to make sure that he's vested in making it a success with you. And that's number one, what I did. And I've got Adam and Manuel, two of our co-founders, who are extremely good at building technology. So that helped. I did a little bit of it. The second part of that question is what keeps me up at night. A lot of things. But I'll tell you the number one thing is by the end of this year, we'll be in 10 to 12 markets, and I'm committed to that. And I've just rolled out, or about to roll out in June, Beaumont, Port Arthur, and New Orleans. And by the end of the year, I've got to be in Shreveport, Tyler, and Longview. And what keeps me up at night is, number one, will we keep the growth going so that we can get there? Because I worry about tomorrow, the economy changes, people stop ordering, on WAITR, and then what do you do? And then also, how do we hire the right people in each of those places and manage them from South Louisiana, right? And so those two things keep me up at night, and those are the things I think about when I'm in the shower in the morning until my head hits the pillow, and then till I finally am just exhausted from thinking and doze off.
There's no better way though, right? There's nothing more fun than doing that.
I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world right now. I mean, it's been a lot of fun to this point, and the fun for us is just beginning. I mean, I'll give a plug to Louisiana Economic Development too. There's a program, by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, get familiar with the programs that the state of Louisiana offers, especially if you're a technology entrepreneur. It's phenomenal what this state does to attract companies like ours to be here and stay here. But we just did an economic gardening. We were part of the economic gardening program. So it's for stage 2 companies that are in that second stage of development. And I call it the company building phase, right? So we are moving out of startup phase into company building now. And our goal for that program was to identify 50 new markets where we had very little competition, where the number of restaurants to population was right, the income to population was right, all those different things. And they came back with 222 cities that we took and pared down to 50, and then we just took that and got down to 20. And it's 20 cities that we want to grow into within the next 18 to 24 months that we have no competition.
Wow.
And so, so that's our focus now, right? So we'll spend all of our attention for the next 18 to 24 months focused on those 20 cities. And then once we roll out those 20, then we'll go into the next phase 2, and roll out more. So I'm not real sure where I was going with that, by the way.
No, that's great. That's
so I wanted to make sure to let you guys know this is a great program, because it just identified things for us that we suspected, but we didn't have the money to do the research at the time that we really needed to do the research, and we were moving so fast in the existing markets where we were that we really couldn't think about the next market. So we were just throwing darts at a dartboard to decide where we were going next. And then all of a sudden this economic gardening thing comes up, and now we have a very well-researched project with an interactive map that shows all the next target markets for us and our growth trajectory, and we've been able to put together kind of a path to profitability, if you will. And I mean, it's phenomenal, and it didn't cost us a dime. So
nice. That was good plug. I like that. Thanks. So I do have one last question, and then if you're okay with it, I'd like to ask a couple people if they have any questions. So don't try to gotcha him while we're up here, but maybe a little bit. So I do want to ask you this question because, man, I get this a lot from my buddies back in Nashville, right? They go, because they see me, WAITR shirt, talk about WAITR app, and I mean, I'm proud of you guys. You guys have done a phenomenal thing. And you know what? Forget everybody who said you couldn't make it in Louisiana, because I think you've proven that wrong already.
Yeah, I'll tell you another story about that, too,
all right.
in just a second.
Tell me that, and I'll tell you.
Okay.
Tell me that's more important.
So we started to go out to raise capital. And the first $200,000 we raised locally. It wasn't that big a deal to get it. But we went, after we raised the $200,000, I went to a number of different VCs, a couple in Houston, a couple in Florida because of the startup weekend thing in Florida, and then a couple in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yep.
Every single one of them said, you're going to have to move out of Louisiana. You're going to have to move to the Valley, or you're going to have to move to Austin. If we fund you, that's a requirement. And I said, I'm not willing to do it. Mm-hmm. And then they said, well, then we're not interested in WAITR. And then I went to an event, Steve Case. Anybody, you guys know who Steve Case is, the founder of AOL? Mm-hmm. He had an event, he has a Revolution tour, and it's all about you don't have to be in Silicon Valley or Boston to have a successful startup. Yep. And he had an event in New Orleans right about the time that we were trying to raise our second round of funding. So I went to that event and listened to him talk, and I got up and I asked the question about, why is it that every time I talk to a venture capital group, they want to move us out of Louisiana? And, he gave an answer which was just kind of an answer that you would give in front of the group. And then after the event, he pulled me aside and he said, look, he said, I will tell you this, Chris. I told him my name, and obviously he didn't know me before, but he said, stick to your guns. He said, I'll tell you, if you stick to your guns, the capital will come. All you have to do is make sure that you execute. And if you execute, the capital will come wherever you are. And so that's what I did. And we ended up raising an additional, now an additional $2.5 million, or additional $2+ million in Louisiana. And now we have a couple hundred employees here in Louisiana. Yeah. So you can do it in Louisiana, and I think we're proof of that right now, that it can be done here. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley, and you don't have to be in Boston. And I will be in Silicon Valley tomorrow talking to more venture capitalists. And I will tell them that same thing I just told you guys.
I love it. That's right. You don't want to work somewhere where you can't ask them about your mom and them not understand what you're talking about. How's your mom and them?
That's right.
They say, what are you talking about? Get out of here. Get out. You tell them, we're not working with you unless you understand that question. So, all right.
My mom and them helped me get WAITR started. So,
you know what? The beauty of it. So, I'm from Nashville originally, which will lead me back into my other story. But the funniest part of coming here to Louisiana is when you hear that, how's your mom and them, or who's your mom and them? And you start connecting all the dots, and I heard you all chatting, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, that's my cousin. No, well, he was married to my cousin, but yeah, that's my other cousin. And you start to get into Louisiana. You start to get into, and everybody goes like, oh, man, little towns, No, you go into New Orleans and everybody's related to everybody. You go like, but it's beautiful,
right?
Because the nice thing is when you hear people say, well, you can't make it, in a state like Louisiana. I disagree, because your connectivity is so much deeper here. The thing is you got to prove that it works. You got to execute well. But as far as finding talent, in my opinion, as an outsider who's not going back to where I came from, right? So I'm an insider now. All the talent is here. We just haven't had the leadership in a lot of our entrepreneurs who haven't stuck to their guns, right? And said, I'm going to have to move to Austin. Well, staying here and letting those talented people stay here then spawns more talented people to start other ventures and things like that. So I give it to you, man. It's hard to be the trailblazer, but it's a lot of fun to watch what you guys are doing too. So let me ask you this is my last question, then we'll ask people in the audience what they want to ask you. So my buddies in Nashville, they see the WAITR shirt and the WAITR app, and they're like, man, you are just a sellout for whatever is cool, which is true, right? If I like it, I'm all in. You're not halfway in. So they said, all right, so I tell them about WAITR, and they go, oh man, that's so cool. I'd really be into that. But Uber Eats is out there. And I continue to ask them, well, do you use Uber Eats? Well, no, but how are they going to beat Uber, right? So give me, and look, if Uber's about to acquire you, don't say anything bad about them. But with that being said, what are your thoughts on that kind of competitive landscape? Because you mentioned y'all are going to places where you don't have a lot of competition, or it doesn't appear to be.
Right.
But Uber is everywhere. And if Uber Eats is something, right, which was yet to be proven, how do you look at that? How do you look at that competitive landscape from something like that?
Yeah, so I get this often. Mm-hmm. Just last week, Amazon announced Amazon restaurant delivery in Dallas-Fort Worth and New York City. And of course, I got bombarded with emails from restaurant partners to board members to investors to friends and everyone, how are you guys going to survive? How are you going to survive? I'll just tell you, I think you all know the story, right? But there was, way back when, there was a little bitty company in Bentonville, Arkansas called Walmart that took on the Goliaths of the world, you know, Kmart and those guys. That's my short answer, but there's a much better answer than that. But no, I say that jokingly, but really, that is our strategy, right? We're in the Walmart cities. I mean, and the economic gardening study that was done really uncovered the Walmart cities for WAITR, right?
Yeah.
And they're big enough to be really successful markets, but they're too small to attract Uber Eats or Amazon or you know, Grubhub or any of those guys. Now, when we started this in 2013, when I started the company, there were really 3 players in the game. And it was Grubhub, OrderUp, and Eat24 in the U.S., and there were a few overseas. DoorDash didn't exist, Favor didn't exist at that time, you know, all these other competitors that have popped up since then. But our strategy is really simple. Number 1, it's the Walmart cities. Number 2, we are what I would call supply side focused, right? We're a partner to the restaurants. We don't charge the restaurants 15 to 30% on every order that we send them. It's a much, much smaller percentage than our competitors do. We're not focused on just driving massive demand in the city without concern for how it impacts or affects the restaurateurs. We're a partner of the restaurant. Every restaurant that we go in and partner with signs a contract to partner with us because they want to do business with us. The way those guys do it is they strong arm them. They get them all these orders and they start sending all these orders to the restaurants, and then when the restaurants won't sign a contract to pay them a commission on it, they cut them off. So that's the longer answer, and it's also, those guys are going to be, they're focused in the major cities.
Correct.
Which, you know, Houston's the only major city we're in right now, and we're only there because of a partnership we had through Benny Keith, but we won't go into any of the major cities directly anymore. We'll stay in the, you know, in the outskirts, like we're in the Woodlands, we're in Lake Jackson, an hour south of Houston. We're about to launch League City, Webster, those areas. Katy, Sugar Land, those kind of places. We'll go into those in that Houston market, but for us, it's Shreveport, Louisiana, Longview, Texas, Tyler, Texas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, Mobile, Alabama, Gulfport, Mississippi. It's places where Uber and Amazon aren't going to give the time of day.
Correct.
And we will do just fine in every one of those places, just like we do in Lake Charles and in Lafayette and Baton Rouge and those guys. And then I'll cap it off with this, and I tell our investors this. The restaurant industry in the U.S. alone, there's 1 million restaurants, right? 2/3 of the 1 million restaurants are independently owned mom and pop restaurants, very fragmented, right? Look at Lafayette. I mean, you got a few chains here, but everything else is, you know, Pop's Pool Boys and places like that, right? The whole country's that way.
Yeah.
And that's our target customer. So it's a $709 billion industry. All the players together, Amazon, Uber, everybody, makes up less than 5% of that available market today, right? So it's just a blip on the potential market. And to put it in perspective, the worldwide advertising market, which is where Google plays, is a $240 billion a year market. And Google owns about 33% of it. So, and Google is Google today, right?
Correct.
But before Google was Google, they were not Google.
Correct.
Does that make sense, right? I mean, everybody remember Yahoo? Well, Yahoo is about to be gone. But Google was just a little nothing when Yahoo was a big deal, right?
Correct.
So it's not, and believe me, I think being in Louisiana, that helped me too. If I had been in Dallas-Fort Worth, where I lived for the last 20 years, I might have been scared off by the competition. But being down here, seeing the reaction from customers, because, I mean, look, when we started it, you know, we'd always hear, oh yeah, man, these people from California came down here and launched this WAITR app, man. It is the greatest thing. You got to check it out. No, if California is Lake Charles, Louisiana, then yes, we did. But, and you can't get that kind of loyalty if you're Uber or Amazon or any of those guys. So I think we're going to be just fine. I'm not too concerned. I don't spend I don't lose sleep over the competition at night. What I lose sleep over is how I make my customers happy, how I make my partners more money, you know, how I make people's lives easier, how I take care of my employees, all those different things. And I'll keep the competition in my peripheral vision because you have to. But I think it's a plus for us because at some point down the road, they might come and say, hey, we're going to buy you guys, and, you know, we might have to sell out. But I had someone I was talking to earlier tonight, maybe it was Joe, he said, well, it depends on how big their checkbook is. So.
That's right. Well, I think it's interesting too when you talk about the competition piece, and this would be my I guess insight on this is like a Pops, Po' Boys, Blue Basil. We're giving free plugs to a bunch of people. Even, you know, I mean, man, delivering donuts is one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Hey, how about smoothies in the middle of the day when you're eating smoothies?
I'm telling you, that's
Smoothie
crazy.
King coming soon.
I'm telling you, that's crazy. So what I think is interesting though is when you think about those restaurants that they represent, right? Those are the restaurants that we're loyal to. Look, Chili's is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with Chili's. It is what it is, right? But I'm loyal to Blue Basil. I tell my friends about Blue Basil. Blue Basil's the one where he spilled everything on his lap. And they were great about it, right? They even called me. He came back, they called me, said, hey, we're sorry about that. Great, wow. So now I love them even more, right? But these are the restaurants that I'm already loyal to. They have passionate followings. So what you did is you made it easier for me to enjoy them more regularly. So now, instead of, I just lost my mic. Now instead of having to order Domino's to get the only, you know, delivery, now I can get Tsunami Sushi delivered to my front door. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can actually get crawfish, hot crawfish delivered on the WAITR. I just spit, I'm salivating, I'm so excited about it. Great, can you edit that out on camera? You can get hot crawfish delivered to your house, 5 pounds of crawfish, sausage, corn, mushrooms, the whole deal. Revolutionizing. So, hey, so I would like to hopefully motivate you guys. We would like to continue this series. Chris was kind enough to be the guinea pig, but I think this is great. I really do. I think it's great to hear from people.
I'd love to have had something like this to go to often.
Oh man, like I literally am like sitting here. I should write notes while I'm up here. Next time I'm getting notes, you're just gonna have to shoot me from here up. So, absolutely. But really, I want you guys to think about one or two people that you know who are involved in your business, right? Either as a supporter, as an investor, as a potential partner, as a potential client, as a potential vendor. And I want you to think about how they could benefit from being involved in this ecosystem. Because I think the one thing, and this is true, I think, of not just Louisiana, but smaller communities, right? And Louisiana being a state that doesn't have a huge population. This is true in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, not as much in Nashville. But, you know, the bigger cities that have more density and have stronger entrepreneurial communities have people who are multi-connected. You know what I mean? You'll have 6 or 7 friends, you know, that are working on a project or influencing a project or mentoring a project. And we all know 1 or 2 people, but those people don't always participate with us. You know, they live on that island. I know May and I talked about that, right? They live on the island. And if we had 100 people or 300 people or 500 people who were involved in giving you that nugget to get past that blocker, you know, to give you that small piece of influence, I think that's where, for us, you know, that's the game changer in our community in Louisiana is we have to get the rest of the people out there that we know are interested to come and participate in these types of things as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I think Pete talked about it earlier, the things that we're doing to attract capital. I know I've been talking to a group out of New Orleans. They're looking at starting a venture fund, which would be one of the first startup venture funds in Louisiana. So I mean, there's a lot going on around, you know, entrepreneurship community in Louisiana, and I think it's like Steve Case said, stick to your guns. We're going to do that, and I think, you know, that's my advice for anyone wanting to start a company in Louisiana: is stick to your guns, seek out people that can help you, that have done it before. I'm always, willing to work with entrepreneurs anytime I can, because I wish that someone would have done it for me. And that's the other thing too. I'll say find a mentor, find someone that you can work with, because you'll get a lot of great advice and maybe miss a lot of the heartaches and along the way. But
correct. And if you're going to ask Chris to be your mentor, you better have downloaded the WAITR app.
yeah.
How about a big round of applause for this guy? Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.